Okay, guys. So my name is Avi Saxena. I am a senior software engineer and Active Directory expert, and I am working in miniOrange from last 5 years. So today I'll be talking about Active Directory security, in particularly mitigating LDAP password attacks using AD tools. So before we start, I'll just like to give my intro. So I am experienced working in LDAP and Kerberos integration solutions. I am a WordPress plugin developer, specifically around cybersecurity domain, and I work on providing security solutions around Active Directory. So before we start, can I know how many of you know what Active Directory is? Okay, a fair amount of people know, but we'll start from covering from basics, so it would be good. So Active Directory is nothing. It's a directory which is a hierarchical database which can mimic an organization's structure, and it can contain different types of objects like computers, users, your hardware devices, and it can exactly replicate what your organization structure is. And it can be accessed via LDAP protocol for authentication and connecting to the database, querying into it, and performing all types of CRUD operations as well. So since it is a hierarchical database, as I said, LDAP protocol is itself a kind of a query which you can do. So I'll cover just a bit what is LDAP, because password spread attacks are done using C# libraries or using LDAP protocol. So that's that. So LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, as the name suggests. It is used to query into the directory to bind, authenticate, and perform CRUD operations on the objects inside the Active Directory. It can be used to so when we talk about on-premise Active Directory, it is usually inside the network of the particular enterprise. So if they want to connect their Active Directory to an outside their network, then they have to use the LDAP protocol. That's the only way to communicate the Active Directory outside the network, if it is an on-premise version. And of course, if you want to connect your third-party applications like WordPress, Atlassian, or any custom application where you want to integrate your Active Directory to your application, you have to use LDAP protocol. So that's the significance of LDAP, and a bit about what Active Directory is. So let's discuss where is Active Directory actually used. So as per my experience, almost 80%, 70% of the enterprises use Active Directory as their identity provider, and usually they can have a hybrid structure, or they can have a completely on-premise one. So in this particular diagram, you can see there's an LDAP server that is nothing but your Active Directory, which is usually in sync with the cloud Azure Entra ID. If you guys have heard about Entra ID, so it keeps in sync, and your Active Directory is further connected to your Exchange server, your mailbox services. It is used for authentication. It is used for authorization and role-based access control, and all your data is actually existing in your Active Directory. So because of these functionalities, Active Directory is widely used in our industry. And as I said, almost 70% of the people are using Active Directory as in their IDP. So since it is so vastly used, there comes a requirement for security, right? So anyone can tell me what could be a reason to, what could be the advantages of targeting Active Directory? Anyone from the audience? Right, exactly. Yeah, correct. So as he said, Active Directory is the backbone of the identity and access management in most of the enterprises. So you can just imagine, if you're having all the data inside your Active Directory, what could mean if it gets somehow compromised. AD integrates with services for authentication and directory lookups. So what it means is it is directly connected to your third-party applications which the companies use in day-to-day. If your AD is down, all your application, you might not be able to work in your company. So that could be a dream for some people. Active Directory down for a day. but basically it is the backbone of your IAM. And the reason it gets targeted is because there are very common attack vectors which can be used for attacking the Active Directory. First of it is weak password policies. So in Active Directory, your password is all dependent upon what kind of password policy you have configured inside your Active AD. And if that is not strong enough to have, then all the people would be having very common passwords. And that is how actually the LDAP spray attacks works, which we'll be covering in detail further. Then the second reason is misconfiguration of LDAP settings in third-party applications. So when you connect your AD to any third party, you need to be very sure that the application is trustworthy. And if it is a custom code, then you have to make sure that your code has proper sanitization and everything, because this can lead to LDAP injection attacks. And again, this is one of the most common attacks which happens in AD. And the third one, which is usually ignored by companies, is lack of monitoring and alerting. So AD by default have their event viewing system, but you particularly need a alerting and monitoring tool which can help you. And that is absent in most of the enterprises. So that could also lead to AD being compromised in some scenarios. And as we talked about, the impact could be very catastrophic at times. There could be a lateral movement inside the network for days, and the administrator may not even know what's happening. And if a user account is compromised, then they can get access to your third parties and your company resources very easily. So what are the common type of attacks which are prone, which the AD is prone to? Anyone, any guesses? Okay. Anyone else? Password string. Okay. That was a cheat answer. Anyone else? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I have just wrote down 4 most common attacks. First is password spray attack. It is a type of brute force attack, slightly different from the typical brute force, but yeah, it's a very common attack. Second is Kerberoasting. This is like in Kerberoasting, if your architecture is using Kerberos protocol somewhere, and a user get access to any of your domain gen machine, then in that case, they can use the hash of the Kerberos ticketing system, and they can again get access to your third-party applications and wherever LDAP is being used. Then passing the hash using Mimikatz tool. It is a very popular tool which which hackers use to get the hash out of your domain joined machine, and it helps to even do the Kerberoasting attacks. And the last one is LDAP injection attack. So LDAP injection attacks usually happens from some third-party application in which the user uses. It's similar to SQL attacks. It's like if your inputs are not getting properly sanitized, they can get access to your some kind of access to your AD, and they can retrieve information of your users from there. Okay, so today I'll be just talking about password spray attacks and details. So anyone have any idea on your show of hands what password spray attacks are? Okay.
Ready to explain. Hello. Yeah, so you would just take a common guessable password and use that to try and see if any of the existing user accounts are susceptible to that particular password.
Right. So basically what happens, password spray attacks are a bit different from the typical brute force attacks. What we do is, there's a list of users and a list of common password, or maybe a data breached passwords which are available on the dark web, and they can be used to spray those password against different list of users. So basically, if there is a password like summer 2023, so they'll be using that password against multiple accounts, which actually helps them to avoid any kind of lockout. So the AD has a lockout policy enforced, but in case of password spray attacks, if the lockout policy is not strong enough, it can bypass that, and that could result in compromisation of few accounts. And the ultimate goal of spray attacks is to compromise the user credentials of an account and try to get access to any applications which are using LDAP authentications. So I hope it is a bit clear what LDAP password spray attacks are. But what is the reason of people having common password? So that's the most common password, right? How many of you ever used this password? Sometime, for sure. So then we got introduced to the concept of having strong passwords. Okay. So how to make a password strong? Like the most basic thing. Anyone? Okay. So we can have a capital letter in the password. This is all lowercase, right? So we'll convert the P with the capital P. Then comes, okay, it has lowercase, it has uppercase. Now let's have a digit. So do you think password 123 is the common password? No, we are very lazy. We replace O with 0. Any other thing left? Anyone can point out? You are right. So all of us developers can quite relate to it because we are using this password everywhere almost. And if you don't believe me, you can Google it. This is one of the most common password. So this is the common type of practice using which spray attacks, these are the causes because of which spray attacks can happen and attacker can get access to your, it's not just in case of AD, but in kind of any identity application. If you are using many commonly used password, you are not at safe and at risk. Okay. So why are password spray attacks effective? So the first reason for them being effective is weak password are used across a large set of audience. So maybe I'm the one who is not using a weak password, but someone else in my team might be. So since the user base is so large, there are high chances that someone or another is using a weak password. It evades the likelihood of triggering any kind of lockout policy by mimicking a normal user activity. It is a very common practice that you don't enter your password correct in the first time. Okay, so that can actually not trigger the lockout policy in case of password spray attacks if the lockout policy is not strong enough. If you have a strong lockout policy like your banking applications, how many of you are irritated by a banking application or use forget password every time they use the application? I am the one, right? So what happens over there? The lockout policy is strong that it doesn't allow you to give a hit and try. So that is something which is needed in AD as well. You need to have very strong lockout policy so no spray attacks can happen. So anyone, like you might not have heard, but password spray attacks are quite common and they have been quite catastrophic when it comes to it. So one of the attacks was run on Citrix by a set of Iranian cyber attackers. In that attack, the attackers got access to the virtual drives and the company email accounts, and they were able to use multiple internal applications which were using ADFS. This was run on ADFS. So that was one example. Another one was attack on SolarWinds by Nobelium group. Nobelium is a very infamous Russian cyber attackers group. So in this particular attack, SolarWinds was being used by many US government agencies, and most of them were many US agencies were targeted using this attack. And the reason for the attack was one of the intern in their company was using the password SolarWind123. So that's how commonly used password can create a dominoes effect. So that being said, what could be the consequences of such attacks? So definitely first of them is data breach. Then network can be compromised. There could be data modification being done. Authentication can be bypassed. Unauthorized access can leak sensitive information. Operational disruption. You might not be able to work and not able to log into any application if your AD is down. There are compliance violation. Your organization just may lose their compliance, and obviously financial impacts are there, and escalation of privilege escalation. So these are some of the consequences of the attacks which happen because of this. So I'll just show you a quick demo of a password spray attack. So for the attack, there's a prerequisite of having access to a domain joined machine. If you get access to any domain joined machine, you can perform LDAP spray attacks using PowerShell scripts. And those scripts are very easily available on GitHub, or you can just use ChatGPT. So I'll just show you the demo. Okay. So in this case, we created a list of easy guessable password which are being used. Okay. Yeah. So we use this particular list of passwords. These are commonly used passwords and are at times discovered in data breaches. So okay. So once you import a script in PowerShell, you can just run some simple commands which are which can trigger LDAP or LDAP bind request using the list of users available and list of passwords. So when we do it in this case, so you can see it when we trigger the password attacks, it fails for most of the cases, but in few cases it can be a successful, and we can have a list of compromised account. So you can see there are two accounts which were using not secured password at 123 and QWERTY 123. So this is how a password spray attack is done, and it is very easy to perform. You can get n number of scripts online. Even if you don't have any knowledge about scripting, you can use it very easily. So this was one password spray attack. Now the thing is, we have been talking about this, but how can we actually mitigate these kinds of attacks? So to avoid these attacks, what we can do is we can have a strong password policy applied on your AD, which can like in your banking application. It's the most easiest example which you can connect to. Banking applications have a very strong password policy. Like that, we should use strong password policies, have account lockout policies again. By default, the AD have a lockout policy, but in case you are using finite access password policies, then you have to create your own lockout policies, and again, they should be strong enough to avoid any kind of attacks. And third is you should have a system in place to monitor your LDAP traffic, which is coming inside and outside your domain controller. So these three things are something which every organization who's using Active Directory should abide by. And to achieve this, you can use some AD tools. There are many AD tools available in the market. So today I'll just show you a demo of miniOrange LDAP AD tools, using which we are trying to avoid LDAP password spray attacks. Okay. So once you have logged in inside your portal after entering your credentials, you can create password policies over here. So you can see there are two already password policies which are configured, and those password policies can differ for each separate individual containers, like groups or OU, or it can apply directly on some users. And it has a wide variety of policies like restricting characters, restricting age, length, restrict lockout policy. The policy is, this is the lockout policy, which is there in 80 by default. So for this example, we'll try to create a lockout password policy for admin users. So we can, when we are creating finally and finally and password policies, we can select on which particular individual groups or containers or user you want to apply that. So for this scenario, we are applying this password policy on administrators. Once that is done, we can turn on the password complexity and have different parameters like number of uppercase, lowercase, special characters. We can restrict the length. So in this case, we'll increase the minimum password length. Then we have password expiry. Then we can have a strong lockout policy. So in this case, we are setting the lockout threshold to 3 and the lockout duration or observation window to 45 minutes. So what this means is, if you enter three incorrect password within a 45 minutes window, your account will be locked for next 45 minutes. So that could be an example of a strong password policy. But just having a password policy is not enough. As we've seen the example of the password with the capital P, a digit 0 and @ you need to have some password filters as well. By password filters, I mean to avoid a list of password from being set by the user. So in this case, we can see that there's already 10 lakh passwords stored in the DB, and they are blacklisted. If you want, you can add. If you want, you can add your own passwords, which you want to discourage the users from using. Once this is said, we'll try to do a spray attack on this particular environment, which is having these kinds of password policies. So it is but obvious that after this, users will not be able to have weak passwords because the password policy is strong enough, and they will also be this will also be triggering account lockout because there are multiple user accounts on which we are targeting the passwords. So we are doing this attack on 33 accounts right now. So like the previous example, the password was tried, the LDAP bind requests were made using different usernames and passwords, and almost there was no password or account being compromised. So if we'll log in again into our AD tool, any AD tool, then they have a option of having seeing lockout accounts. So we'll just see if there were any lockouts triggered after this attack or not. Well. Okay, so you can see here's a list of 33 accounts which were locked because of this spray attacks, and this is how you can protect your AD from few attacks. This is one of the example. Then there comes the role of management also. You can have you can manage your users in different groups and have strong password policies over there. You can have a separate monitoring, AI-based monitoring and alerting system as well. So just not using AD tools, but there are different mitigation best practices as well. So the best practices for any organization would be to have strong password policies, monitor and analyze login attempts, account lockout policies, implement login restriction, and most important is educate and train the users. So this is a small example of password spray attack, and how we can mitigate or protect our AD using external tools. Okay, so if you guys have any questions.
Right, the floor is open for questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. Anyone? Okay, then we can conclude this session. Please give a big round of applause for Avi.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being patient and listening to the session. Please give me feedback by scanning this QR code if it is visible.